G'day guys, how you doing? It's the Kiwi and I'm back with another video. So, in all sincerity, this is going to be the last video that I'm going to be doing on any subject matter in regards to what is rolling out down in New Zealand. The truth of the matter, the real reality is what is happening down there is going to continue to roll out. So there's very little that I can do to change the situation. I'm going to segue back off into the material that I used to be doing on the channel, which is just trying to help you guys out individually, to help you understand what is going on and help you change the direction in your lives in a positive respect. More so today because, in all sincerity, there's a lot of crazy going on right now, isn't there? And we're going to talk about that in upcoming videos because people need to really know what is going on. Not just what we see in the world, but is actually going on behind the veil. That's also incredibly important for people to know. So with that being said, I have had a number of people in the comments section of previous videos asking me about April 1st, about what is going to be rolling out down in New Zealand as far as this free trade agreement is concerned. Now, I've read the free trade agreement, most probably about 80% of it, and I don't see anything really that bad about it. However, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to listen to this very clearly, because the truth of the matter is that not many people know about what I'm going to tell you. And that is that New Zealand used to be Chinese territory. That's the God's honest truth. Hard to believe, however, it is actual truth. I was fortunate enough to know an educator that, an American educator that worked in China, and they shared this with me a number of years ago. I actually didn't believe it. I thought it was a little pie in the sky kind of stuff. However, with what I'm seeing and what I've actually heard Chinese politicians say, it's like, this dude was on point. And that is that China has 8,000 to 10,000 years of written history in regards to who it used to trade with, who it used to trade with, the business routes, or not the business routes, the trading routes that they used from China through India to what would be known as the Middle East now, Africa, and even into Europe. They have written history about a massive cataclysmic event that happened a few thousand years ago, about 2,000 years, about 1,500 years ago, where a meteor smashed into the planet, the Pacific Ocean between New Zealand and South America, and pretty much wiped out the entire population of New Zealand, except for a small handful of individuals. They have written history on climate, all these different things that have gone on with the planet. And just recently, in recent years, most probably about the last 18 months, 2 years, there's been Chinese politicians actually stating categorically that they have a greater claim over the territory that is known as New Zealand, as it used to be Chinese territory. So the thing is this, when they have 8,000 to 10,000 years of written history, they are playing the long game. There's a reason why the cities have been built close to the oceans, these huge super cities. They are planning for a long-term game in regards to their economy, their well-being, everything. They are going to become a massive superpower, and that's all there is to it. So, with that being said, how does this free trade agreement affect New Zealand? Okay, well, firstly, we've got the tariffs. The tariffs are all being dropped, so that's going to make trade between New Zealand and China a lot more easy. They're going to be pulling back on all the rules, regulations, customs, all that sort of stuff to make it a lot more easier for products, etc., to be brought in and out of both countries, which I'm not really too keen on that, to be quite honest with you, because right now New Zealand has a massive narcotics problem in that part of the world. So easing all the border restrictions, rules, regulations, making it easier to get stuff in and out of New Zealand, I believe will only actually increase the actual narcotics problem that is in that part of the world right now. The other thing that is like slipped in there is opening up Chinese investment in the country. Chinese investment in infrastructure, corporations, companies, everything along that lines. A good example right now would be the future railway that is going to be built from the port of Tauranga to the port of Auckland, New Zealand. That is going to be built by a Chinese corporation. The New Zealand government is going to be paying said Chinese corporation to build that railway, and said Chinese corporation is going to be utilizing Chinese workers, Chinese employees. So that's one good example of the Chinese investing in New Zealand infrastructure in some way, shape or form. The other thing is it's going to be opening up, the Free Trade Act opens up the doors for a greater ease of Chinese citizens to be able to become New Zealand residents and citizens. It's deep in there. It's under the guise of just tourism, making it easier for Chinese to come in and out of the country. And then, so the interesting thing, and this is the most important thing I believe, because this will affect New Zealand not in the short term but in the long term, and that is the trade deficit between the two countries. You see, what you have to understand is New Zealand is an extremely small country at the bottom of the world, and it's got a very limited amount of resources. And currently the trade deficit between China and New Zealand is 3-to-1. So that means for every $3 worth of goods, resources, products that is shipped to China, New Zealand only brings in $1 worth. So currently there's $36 billion worth of goods going to China from New Zealand, and New Zealand is bringing in $12 billion worth of Chinese goods. Now, the issue with this is the New Zealand government is looking at these exports increasing about 50% over the next 5 to 10 years. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but when you go from 36 billion to, let's say, $50-60 billion worth of exports, you're basically doubling what is going out. And the reality of the situation is New Zealand's imports will double, which will be basically about $24 billion worth of goods coming from China. So what are these goods? Well, for New Zealand, it's going to be wood products, paper products. Paper products are wood products. It's going to be more dairy products that are going to be shipped to China. Milk, cheese, those sorts of goods. And water is another one. So what I'm trying to point out is what is being shipped to China is resources. New Zealand is going to be shipping its resources to China, and if those resources double over the next 5 to 10 years, that's going to place an incredible amount of strain on the New Zealand infrastructure. Right now, the dairy farms in the South Island of New Zealand are causing a huge amount of pollution in certain rivers, etc. So there's something that needs to be dealt with, something that needs to be handled, which I find rather interesting, primarily because of the fact that New Zealand is meant to be this clean, green bastion of hope for saving the world from climate change, but yet they're constantly going further and further and further backwards in regards to that stuff and not forward. So all these resources are going to be doubling. You know, when you fly over the Marlborough Sounds and you look down at the pine forest, you're seeing huge areas that are just bald now. The forests are just getting obliterated in that part of the world. And a lot of people don't seem to have an issue with this. However, forestry, and I live in the Pacific Northwest, so I'm very well aware of forestry in this part of the country. It takes time, you know, 25 to 50 years for a pine plantation to regenerate itself. So if you don't have that much acreage, which New Zealand really doesn't have that much acreage because so much of the land is protected now, that it's not going to take too long for those forests to be depleted. And the truth of the matter, it's really, really not. So what is New Zealand getting in return? The products that New Zealand is getting back into the country is actually the knick-knack paddywhack stuff. It's going to be electronics, home goods, furniture, clothing, that sort of materialistic consumables per se. Now, this makes it rather interesting because when you go through every Target in New Zealand, and look at the labels, and it's the same here in the United States, you will see China on everything, the Made in China label, everywhere. However, when you look at the fact that China is going to be investing in corporations, infrastructure, etc., in New Zealand, it's going to be utilizing Chinese manpower. And the reason why they're going to utilize Chinese manpower is New Zealanders just can't get anything done anymore. You've literally signed your own death warrant. Sincerely. New Zealanders just don't seem to be able to get anything done of any real substance anymore. I was shocked by just what I saw in Auckland. The railway from Auckland to Hamilton, the time period that it's taken to build that railway, and the absolute poop show that it's become is absolutely unbelievable. Downtown city of Auckland is meant to be the spectacle of New Zealand, this flagship of modernism, wokeness and everything is an absolute mess. Downtown Auckland, at least it was when I left. That was April last year. That was an absolute mess. The subway system in Auckland is an absolute shambles. It just seems that when it comes to these large projects, New Zealanders just can't get anything done anymore at least at the level of government. The actual independent company and corporation owner or manufacturer, the smaller fish in the pot, are still very, very brilliant individuals. It just seems to be that at the greater level of government, forget about it. It's toast. It's worthless. So it's understandable that the Chinese will be bringing in more people. So I would say in the next 10 years, you're going to see New Zealand's population double to somewhere around maybe close to 10 million. So this again places a greater load on resources. So you've got another 5 million people utilizing the resources of the country and then doubling down in regards to the exporting of resources to China. And then you've got that extra few million people needing that knick-knack paddywhack stuff, home goods, electronics, clothing, cars, gasoline, all this different stuff. When New Zealand is on this pedestal of sustainability, there's nothing sustainable about it. You apparently are meant to be this country that's going to be saving the world, but yet you've got this massive amount of consumerism going on right now, and it's only just going to keep on ratcheting up and up and up. And that's where global economic sustainability comes in. What you guys are being lied to about is about sustainability. Sustainability started out as global economic sustainability. It has absolutely nothing with keeping a country clean or green or anything else like that. It is purely about keeping the wheels of commerce rolling. And New Zealand, again, is a flagship for this new modern economic sustainability. So like I said, everything down there is pretty much locked down in stone, unless you really have some sort of massive upheaval politically in that part of the world. Nothing is going to change. So I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Full disclosure, straight up, genuinely. I was down there from March of 2019 to April of 2021, and I was sincerely horrified by what I saw rolling out down there. And what I mean by rolling out down there, I mean how this whole global economic sustainability model has been rolling out down there. It's all based around the United Nations Agenda 21, which is now Agenda 2030. It's a very real thing. And the reality of the situation is, even though New Zealand is still physically New Zealand, it's the country I was born in, it's the country I was raised in, when I got there, it wasn't New Zealand. It wasn't. It wasn't the New Zealand that I grew up in. It wasn't the New Zealand that I left in the mid-90s. It's not the same country anymore. Politically and socially, if you guys don't get it together, within the next 10 years, you're going to lose that. You're going to literally lose the country's identity. You're going to lose your identity as a nation, as a group of people, as a citizenry, as a population. And I am not joking about this in any way, shape, or form. I'm being 100% straight up with you. This is what the goals are for a certain group of people at the top of the pile. So that's my video. It's going to be the last video that I'm ever going to do on this subject. It's right here for you to witness, to see, because what I'm telling you is 100% the truth, and it will happen. So all the best to you. I wish you well. Cheers.